Hi there, and welcome to the next tutorial in this series. In this particular one we're going to start focusing on the tree, as you can see here. This is the sprite sheet as it is. If you've completed the remainder of the tutorials, you should have the pebbles here, and you should have the water with the closed and the open corner sets in there. So the trees. So slightly different to how we've been working previously. So if we started working with just working solid pixels, we then started adding some more brush techniques, and again we're going to sort of incorporate both of those, but a much sort of bigger scale. Okay, so what we're going to do is create a new file, and we're going to go new, and this time we're going to create it 64 by 64 pixels. So no longer 32 by 32, as we want our tree to cover this whole area. So click OK, and zoom in. We can take our layer back to being transparent. It's not letting me okay, that visibility because it's locked, so double click the layer, and then we can click OK. That'll unlock it, then we can hide it. There we go. So in essence we are working 32 by 64 because we only need to create half of the tree, okay, and then we can duplicate the other section. So as we're working in this RPG style, the first thing we need to do is sort of just work out where we're going to draw what and what sort of shape it's going to be. So select your brush, and it's going to take that down, and obviously I'm just going to sort of rough out an idea of how big we want it. Now I'm just going to measure very quickly. Width we want 32, okay, and we can take this on, and then we're just going to go edit, stroke. I'm going to stroke the outside, that's the inside, sorry, file, edit, stroke, and we're going to click outside, which means the outside of this is now we don't want to pass this dark line here, this black line. So let's just go redo stroke. Control D, which will then deselect, and then we're going to create a new layer. Okay, so this one's just a guide. Now what we're going to do is we need to imagine that our tree stump is sort of going to be around here, okay, moving up, and our branches are going to fall from this point onwards. So if we imagine our sort of tree coming down, and then around, and then around, and then around, and then we can just about see our sort of branches underneath. Now because we're going to duplicate this layer onto the other side, we're just going to do that now. We're going to duplicate a layer, push Control T, go to the top of the bar up here, push minus 100 in the width percentage. That should flip it over. Push enter, and I've pulled the wrong one, and let's just move this across and actually look at the overall shape. Okay, so it's okay, but it's not very round here. Look, we're getting this sort of heart shape impression. So what we're going to do again is create a new layer on top. This time we'll just change the colour so we can differentiate between them. We'll go for a red, so click the colour picker just to sort of make it stand out a little bit more. Okay, so we want our sort of tree to, its leaves at least, to sort of follow this curve. Okay, probably make it a little bit bigger there, and we can bring this out around here. Okay, and obviously we get our sort of branches at the bottom coming out, and that will look like that. Okay, obviously we can add a bit more of a trunk in. It's not a big deal. If we hide the ones underneath, and this is going to be sort of our finish. Now obviously when we work in the leaves and stuff, we'll be able to sort of get down to the nitty gritty with that shape and all the intricate little shapes that we're going to have to form the leaves. Now I'm still feeling that this top part is a little bit too big for the top of a tree. They're usually quite small, so we're just going to break that down a little bit. If you push E, it'll bring up the eraser, and we can just erase these parts. So we're just going to keep the base, and we're just going to rework these a little bit until we're happy with what we have. So I'll just go for three loops, just to keep it nice and sort of clean and simple. And again, I mean, if you look back at the original one that I did, I think I got 1, 2, 3, all 4 and 5. I went a little bit more there. You know, I'll tell you what, let's do it. Let's add another couple in. Should make it a little bit more interesting. Okay, then we'll add one there, and then we'll add one in here. Okay. Now, obviously, we can't really see the leaf output here, because they're solid rings, but obviously that will reveal itself as we start to paint those on. So this is the sort of thing we want to go for, this sort of shape. So what we're going to do is just delete these original layers, we don't need them any longer. We're still going to keep our guide up, but we're going to turn the opacity down on this tree, because as I say, it's just a guide, it's not to be followed exactly. So the first thing we want to do is sort of create our neutral colour. Now we want to start thinking about the colour of our tree. We're going to start with green. We don't want to go really warm. If we look at the colours on the original one, which you can't because I've got this open, they're very muted. Even though this purple, which we'll show you how to do later, they're still very muted in terms of the other parts or the other sprites. So we don't want to disrupt that continuity by having a really rich warm colour. So if we pick a muted tone, and what we're going to do is, we don't want the paintbrush tool, but we do want the pencil tool. Okay, and we're going to just paint on a little stalk up there and actually bring that round. As I said, these are a guide, they're not to be exact, we don't need to follow them so specifically. Okay, so we created like a little tip for the tree. I mean, it's up to you how you want to do that. I quite like this idea of having like a real sort of evil looking environment. So when I did mine, I was thinking about loads of little spikes to make it feel more sinister and scary and follow triangles. Now you might want to make a really sort of happy, friendly place, in which case you can go really sort of circular with your trees and obviously with the colour scheme. But I'm going to sort of follow in that sort of tact as before and go for quite a scary looking tree, but I still want to follow the curvature of the leaves. Okay, just take this back a few steps, get the shape right, so again we don't have to follow too much, but yeah, we just sort of want to follow the fact that this may have leaves. It's really important that these curve. Now, because we're going to duplicate this, as you can see here, I left it in for a reason. This is really big at the centre of these trees, and that's good because it helps us create depth, but at the same time it does cause a little bit of conflict. So what we're going to do is we're going to start working down the middle and actually working out what is a good size, going to be a good size for our tree, for our leaves. So if we take this in here, and we're going to sort of bring this up and down, and now what I hope is we're just going to give it a quick test that if we duplicate it and take it to -100, oh, it's going to -10. There we go. You know, I'm quite happy with that. Yep, I think that's the one. Okay, cool. So we're just going to follow that now and actually follow this round. Be careful, we don't want to connect these up, we still want to have them to have distinguishable shapes, because it makes the next stage that little bit easier. Okay, we can tie that in, and maybe we have a little piece sort of coming across the top there. Maybe make this a little bit bigger. As I say, it's just trying to, it depends what sort of tree you're going for. Again, I don't like the size of that leaf at that point there. I feel it's too big, so especially as we're getting further away. So what we might do is split these up. So again, don't be afraid if things don't work out. If they don't work out, just keep working at them until they do. You know, people that give up on things are the ones that tend to have the either the poorer quality work or don't actually make it. So we want to really keep our eyes on that. So again, we want to just keep this flow underneath in the neck, going through for the next ring. Okay. Again, so we'll put in these branches here, these leaves. As we get to the bottom, we want to start making this a little bit more wider. That's probably too much. I would say only increase it by a row as we get an additional row as we get towards the bottom. We don't want them ending up being too big, okay, and being ridiculously huge like this bottom one. I think is going to be absolutely gigantic, but we can amend that later on. So again, let's just add a little bit there, hint that increase in size. So again, we're just gonna go ahead now and just sort of paint these in without being too picky. It's going to undo. Oh, turn that round. I think when I've been pushing shortcut keys, it's picked that up. So again, we can push them in. Still not happy with that flow that's coming out. Okay, let's try and keep with this angle. So we're going to follow this flow down, and we'll try and work something into the others later on. Okay, so when we get to this sort of bottom here, this is going to be where we have all these sort of loose bits sort of poking out. So we don't need to get too much, and we can go back to push E for our eraser, push the square bracket to decrease it. I know some people have been having trouble in lesson using that shortcut with it getting a bit stuck. So if you do, just go back to your normal method by pushing the eraser on the menu set. Let's open this up a little bit, go back to your brush, and then obviously we can paint stuff back on. So B's for brush, and then we're just going to keep building back in. So we're going to just follow with another piece under here, make this one a little bit larger, make it obvious that as we get to the bottom of the tree, you know, these parts stick out. And we're going to go for one piece in here first, and then we're going to add another one, probably another two actually. I think we can get away with in here. We will make them a lot bigger. There we go. Okay, so kind of cool. Again, just want to just try and avoid leaving any gaps. Well, not have any large gaps, I should say. And I'm kind of happy with that, how that's working out. In this one, I was trying to have bits sort of bulging out the sides, but I think I'm going to make an additional tree type for my scene, so it's perfectly okay. Just think about the overall shape that you want to go for. So once we've got this sort of neutral layer in, what we need to do is start thinking about our shadow, okay, underneath. So what we're going to do is, again, create a new layer, pull that underneath. We're just going to rename this one, saying base color green 1, and then we're going to create so with the new layer we're going to rename that as inside leaf behind behind leaf shadow, okay, because we don't want to say leaf shadow or something like that, because we are going to add shadow to the individual leaves, so we don't want to ruin that. So behind leaf shadow, and that means that it's the shadow that's behind the leaves, obviously. And what we're going to do is go back into the green, and we're going to select a real dark green, because obviously it's going to be really dark and shaded inside. Now these we can just paint on underneath. It'll probably look quite messy when we remove the leaf layer, but as we're not going to be removing it, then we can sort of get away with that. Okay, if we have any problems further down the line, then we can just rectify them as they reveal themselves. We don't need to worry about that so much for now. So there we go, cool, we're starting to get the shell out of that. And again, you know, you might want to think about your leaf type. I'm not particularly I mean, that's okay. I mean, it's not amazing. I haven't followed any particular type of tree. Probably probably more like a Christmassy type tree, but although their leaves do actually go up and round, not down like this cut, like the typical sort of illustrative type. So what we're going to do now is start to embed this leaf in. So what we want really is, in essence, is to build on this shadow. Okay, we don't want to add shadows to the tip of the tree because that's obviously going to be in the sunlight, and we don't want it to be as dark as this. So what I tend to do is keep our normal colour, dab on the shadow of the leaf's base colour, and then actually sort of go somewhere in between. Okay, maybe a little bit darker, and then just double check that we aren't, yeah, so we're okay, we're not too close to that. And basically what we're going to do is create a new layer. We won't name it just yet, we'll just get straight in with the painting, because obviously we don't like it, we can delete it. So again, we can start to bring the shadow in. So try to follow the leaf's actual form, yeah, where we think that, where at that point where it's coming out from underneath the shadow. And yeah, there we go, we can really starting to build that up now. And again, we're going back to this basic painting technique using individual pixels, and by using individual pixels you'll be developing your understanding of colour, from light, from shadow, and this is going to really set you up really well for second year if you progress, which obviously I hope everybody will. And if you're watching this video and you kept up to this stage, then you're obviously increasing those chances because you're getting this information in and you're exercising that. So if we push E, we're going to get rid of this. For some reason it's brought up edit. If we push E, it should bring up the eraser. Yep, and then we can just delete that. Okay, so it was a leaf piece underneath, so we don't need to. Okay, so let's just zoom out, take a quick look. See, we're starting to get that 3D effect in there. What we're going to do now is, again, go back to our colour picker, stick with the one we've got, which is there, and we're going to increase our base colour, and we want to go somewhere in between those two. Okay, so I'm going to say around here. Click OK, and then again create a new layer. Just double check that that's in between those parts. Just cancel, sorry, I'll push Control Z and I'm not sure if you've undone this or not. Click OK, yeah, cool, okay. So again, we've created our new layer, obviously on eraser, and then we can paint on these effects. So again, although we're not noticing too much difference, okay, when we zoom out, when we go further away, these pixels will blend in. This sort of information was experimented with a lot by an artist called Kandinsky with his colour blob circles. I can't remember the exact title, and he painted these massive circles with individual colours on in each ring, and when you was up close they were very clear, and the idea was that the further away you got, the less you could see them, and they blurred together to make new colours. Okay, so we're really starting to ease out of that now. So what we're going to do is start to work on the other side now. So we're going to say to ourselves, what is the brightest colour we're going to go for? So we need to imagine that the sun is reflecting off the tips of each of these and reaching those bits that are sticking out the most. So we could go for this really lucid, horrible green, but what we're going to do is go for this really sort of subtle blue, thinking about like a lime, a sort of lime green, and paint the tips. Okay, on this one at the top, it's more going to be right at the top here, and maybe on a couple of bits down here. Unlike what I've done here, obviously start a new layer, I forgot to say that. Again, we will rename these, so don't feel that I'm going back on my own principles that I stress in every lesson that we have. So again, we're going to build these up, a couple of pixels here and there, and just on the very tips, and then that's our way of saying these bits are reaching out the light, so we're creating the illusion of depth, which is what we want. Okay, so we zoom out again. Cool, I like that. Okay, so I think we might add again just another one, because there's not much variance on this part here at the top. So what we're going to do is go back to our colour pickup, go back to our base shadow. There's a massive gap in between those, so we're going to work from the light down, so we need to go through around here. As we can see the light there, so we definitely know it fits in. And then we're just going to create a new layer, and then we're just going to sort of paint over these slightly. You know, the reason we create new layers is because it gives us maximum control over the image should anything go wrong. And again, we should just fill that out. So almost there. And I think that's kind of cool. Yeah, wicked. Look at that. Getting some really nice shadowing if you zoom right out. If you imagine that in a game. Look at that. There we go. So what we're going to do now is also just add a little bit of the darker shade on. Go back to the correct layer, which I think is this one here, layer 6. I'm just going to paint a few bits on here onto the body of the tree. Okay, and just create a little triangle in there. There we go. Just breaks it look that little bit. Okay, so we're just going to rename our layers. We'll just double check which one's which. So that is the leaf shadow, leaf shadow 1, leaf shadow 2, and leaf, that's the lightest one, so we'll go leaf light 2. In fact, yeah, we'll keep that at the top, and we'll just keep it in the same suit. So leaf light 2, and then we'll just go leaf light 1. There. Cool. So again, I'm really happy with that. Hopefully you've sort of picked your own shape, or if you follow this, there's nothing wrong with that. So again, it's looking pretty cool. Remember to save your work. We'll call this tree tutorial. Okay, just so I don't confuse it with my original one, and I will see you in the next video.